everyone. This is a session on the first wave of feminism. The first wave of feminism is, of course, a period of challenges to the legal and social inequalities from the mid 1800s to 1920s, both in United States as well as United Kingdom. Intellectually and theoretically, when we talk about this wave, this period of feminist political activity, of course, it began much earlier with the publication of the feminist philosopher Mary Wollstonecraft's her clarion call for female equality in her 1792 work, A Vindication of the Rights of Woman. Mary Wollstonecraft's achievement was, of course, to crystallize the concerns of her predecessors into a very systematic and philosophical as well as political argument. She expressed not only the concerns of her own contemporaries, but also tried to identify the need, the kind of a wholesale need for a great social reform that would remove oppression in a larger scale. So when we talk about this first wave feminism, we see that all those instances which happened in the first wave feminism largely focused on specific difficulties of individual women. These individual women, as such, they wanted to achieve their clearly defined ends. See, their main focus was, of course, to reclaim the rights of women at that time. Say, for example, you had this divorce laws coming up, you had property rights coming up. All these were instances where we could see individual women standing up for their rights and getting these rights. Right, it was always claiming the rights, claiming personal rights. First wave feminism was all a kind of a personal one, okay, and it is in second wave feminism that this personal becomes political. So they were mostly concerned with injustices which they were experiencing on a personal basis, and the result of this first wave feminism, of course, did happen along the social plane. It did result in a social change as such, but the beginning was, of course, very personal. So in a social plane, in the sense that there was opening of higher education for women as a result of this personal fighting, personal struggles that these women undertook. There was this opening of higher education for women. There was this Married Women's Property Act coming up. There was this Infant Custody Act coming up. There was this divorce becoming, all these things were becoming comparatively easy for women. And of course, at the end of it, you have the suffragette movements, all these movements coming up. So lots of women's voices did contribute on an individual plane. Lots and lots of women's voices did contribute to bring about major changes in the condition of women at that time. So to give you some instances, you have this Abigail Adams, who was the wife of John Adams, who was the second president of USA. She did write lots and lots of letters to the president demanding equal representation for women within the law, as well as an access to women's equality and education. And of course, when we see all these instances, we find that first wave feminism also did not address the lowest strata of the society, because most of the time first wave feminism did focus on the upper middle class bourgeoisie women, because of this industrialization, they were confined to the four walls. They were very much, these bourgeoisie women, they did have wealthy husbands. They were the first to find themselves at home with nothing to do. So Mary Wollstonecraft, in her very important, very key feminist text, actually, she in the Vindications for the Rights of Women, she compared these privileged women to the members of, I quote, feathered race birds. that these women, they are confined to the cages, and do not have anything to do but preen themselves. This is what Mary Wollstonecraft says. They have nothing to do but preen themselves and stalk with mock majesty from perch to perch. So middle class women, middle class ladies, they were actually kept women. They were kept women who had to sacrifice their health, their liberty, their virtue for the prestige, their pleasure, and just for the power that their husbands provided them. In the sense that just because they had some sort of a power and pleasure that their husbands were providing them. So they couldn't, of course, enter the public realm as such. They couldn't enter the public sphere as such, as that would risk their lily white face. The lily white face would get tanned. They couldn't take decisions of their own, and they did lack agency. They did lack liberty in every sense. They were not at all allowed to develop their reason. So, of course, Wollstonecraft as such did not talk about this socially constructed gender roles, etc. But then she did deny the fact that the concept or the notion that was spread, that by nature women are more pleasure seeking and pleasure giving than men. She did deny that sort of a concept. What she did reason is they were confined. If men were confined to the same cages that trap women now, men would of course develop the same flawed characteristics that are there in women right now. Now, denied their chance to develop their rational powers, they're denied a chance to grow, develop their reason, to become moral persons with concerns, with causes, with commitments, beyond this personal pleasure. Men would of course become very emotional, overtly emotional. That is the term Mary Wollstonecraft uses. She uses this term emotional to connect it with hypersensitivity, extreme sort of narcissism, excessive self-indulgence, so much of interest in their body, their concerns, their sort of a narcissistic tendency. Now, Mary Wollstonecraft was a person who did give a very negative assessment of emotion, and she placed an extraordinarily high premium on reason. She says that reason is something which differentiates, which distinguishes human beings from animals, and Wollstonecraft was very much against Rousseau's concept, Rousseau's creation of this character called Emily. See, in his now who is this Emily? Who is this Emily and Sophie? In his classic educational philosophy, Rousseau portrayed the development of rationality as the most important goal, important educational goal for boys, but not for girls. Rousseau was all the time committed to this concept of sexual dimorphism. The sexual dimorphism is a view that rational man is a perfect complement for emotional woman, and vice versa. Now, Rousseau felt that men should be educated in virtues like courage, temperance, justice, fortitude, etc., whereas women should be educated in virtues like patience, docility, good humor, flexibility, etc. Thus, for Rousseau, or Rousseau's ideal male student, he actually creates an ideal male student in a character called Emily. He actually studies humanities, social sciences, natural sciences, whereas Rousseau also creates a female character who is Sophie, an ideal female student who is Sophie. She dabbles in music, art, fiction and poetry, and also refining her homemaking skills. Rousseau always wanted Emily to sharpen his mental capabilities, and he always wanted to limit the chances, limit the opportunities for Sophie to enter the public realm. and he always wanted Emily to equip himself to become a self-governing citizen and a dutiful citizen, whereas Sophie, a very understanding, very responsive, emotional, caring, loving sort of a wife and mother. Now, Wollstonecraft, of course, agreed with the character of Emily there, the the projections that he gave for Emily, but then she did not, Mary Wollstonecraft did not agree with what Rousseau was giving for Sophie. Now, drawing upon her familiarity with this middle class ladies, middle class women, because Mary Wollstonecraft had created a sort of rapport with these middle class women, and with that familiarity, she predicted that once you feed steadily a sort of a diet, a sort of a nutrition, a diet of novels, poetry, music, gallantry, etc. If the same thing is fed again and again in a steady manner to Emily as well, Emily would become Sophie, and Sophie, according to Mary Wollstonecraft, is very much detrimental complement to her husband Emily. She is very much detrimental, a very dangerous complement to her husband, because this feeding of novels, music, poetry, gallantry, etc. would create a sort of bad sensibility rather than good sense. Now, what would happen to Sophie is that her hormones would surge, her passions would erupt, her emotions would come out churning, and Sophie would not show any sort of practical sense or practical reasoning in performing her wifely and motherly duties. Now what is the cure? Wollstonecraft says that the cure for Sophie was to provide for her, like Emily, with a kind of education that permit any person to develop their rational and moral capabilities to its fullest way, so that there is a development of human potential in the fullest manner. And she also said that unlike the emotional and unlike the dependent women who do have a tendency to shirk the domestic duties and indulge in much of carnal desires, rational and independent women will tend to be better daughters, observant daughters, affectionate sisters, and faithful wives and reasonable mothers as well. Now, so according to Mary Wollstonecraft, of course, Mary Wollstonecraft did not agree with the fact that, I mean, she of course clearly defined the sphere of women. She did not question the sphere of women that is usually attached to women. Like domesticity for Mary Wollstonecraft is a woman's sphere. She did not question that. She says that a truly educated woman, if a woman is educated in a rational manner, in a sensible manner, by giving all those things which are being given to Emily as well, she would be a major contributor to the society's welfare. Now, she says that rather than wasting her talents, wasting a woman's talent and energy on idle entertainments, she would be able to manage the household well, she would be able to manage her children well in a proper manner if she is being given reasonable, commonsensical, the sort of education that is being provided to menfolk. Okay. Now, so according to Mary Wollstonecraft, she says that society owes girls the same education as boys, because human beings should be given equal chance to develop their rational and moral capacities. Now, and Mary Wollstonecraft also celebrated reason over emotion. She did not, as I told you before, she did not question the spheres into which women were confined. For her, an ideal woman should never find any sort of, should never go for any sort of fulfillment beyond her duty as a wife and mother. And what is the need for education then? Now, education for a woman, the rational education that is being provided for a woman should be used for exercising self-control and liberating themselves from being emotional cripples. Now, though there were lots and lots of limitations in her analysis, in her giving importance to reason by underrating emotion as such, we do have lots and lots of limitations in her analysis. But then at that time, at the very beginning of first wave feminism, we see that her analysis did present a vision of a woman who is strong-minded, strong in body and mind, a person who is not slave to her emotions, her passions, her husband or children, a person who could take a decision of her own. That was her aim, not to demarcate the spheres. And it was just that she wanted to give or impart reason to women as well. So many women spoke eloquently, many women spoke out eloquently in an individual level. It was only in the second half of the 19th century that we did have organized campaigns for the betterment of women in education, in employment, in legislation and so on. Writing approximately 100 years later, we see John Stuart Mill and Harriet Taylor, both of them joining Mary Wollstonecraft in celebrating rationality. See, unlike Mary Wollstonecraft, both of them, Mill and Taylor, they wanted to permit individuals to pursue their desires, provided that these individuals do not hinder each other in the process. See, Mill and Taylor also departed from Mary Wollstonecraft in insisting that if society is to achieve sexual equality or gender justice for that matter, then society should provide with the same legal and political rights, economic opportunities, as well as the same education that men enjoy. Like Mary Wollstonecraft, who did attempt suicide 2 times, who refused marriage until very late in life, did have a child out of wedlock, and John Stuart Mill and Harriet Taylor, they led a very fairly unconventional lives. They met in 1830 when Harriet Taylor was already married to John Taylor, and she was the mother of 2 sons at that time. And both of them were intellectually and emotionally so much attracted towards each other, and they did lead a very close and supposedly platonic relationship for almost 20 years until the death of John Taylor, whereupon they got married. Now, during the years before John Taylor's death, all these are conjectures. John Taylor's death, Harriet Taylor and J.S. Mill, they routinely saw each other for dinner and frequently spent weekends together. And of course, John Taylor did agree to this arrangement in return of this so-called external formality of being a wife, residing in his house. So what happened was that because of this unconventional life that Taylor and Harriet Taylor and Mill were having, they did find enough time to author separately as well as conjointly several essays on sexual equality. Scholars do agree with the fact that both of them had co-authored lots and lots of books especially titled Early Essays on Marriage and Divorce, which was published in the year 1832. And Taylor wrote the Enfranchisement of Women in 1851. And Mill wrote The Subjection of Women in 1869, which is of course a very key text in feminist theory. What happens is they were so confident in their relationship that they both of them, they did have differences of their of opinions in them, but then they did not feel they did not feel like they should agree with each other in everything. See, because they did have different views upon women, different views upon children, etc. Harriet Taylor accepted the traditional view that maternal ties are. According to her, she says that maternal ties are very much stronger than paternal ties, and it would be mother who would be able to rear the children to adulthood, even if you get divorced. And Mill. Instead of that, Mill urges couples to marry very late, have children very late, and he also says that you need to live in extended families, a sort of a commune-like families situation, so that would minimize the divorces disrupting effects on children's lives. Now, for J.S. Mill, both men and women, both divorced men and women, would play a role in their children's future, children's lives. They did, of course, have very differing views on women as well. As Mill, J.S. Mill, he was very contented in the fact that even after, he says that even after women were fully educated and totally enfranchised, according to him, he says that most of them would choose to remain in the private realm, where their primary functions would be to in quote, adorn and beautify, rather than to support life, rather than to partake in citizenship, rather than to be a very important, to function as a very important role in the welfare of the society. According to Mill, he says that they won't do that. In contrast, in the book Enfranchisement of Women, Taylor argued that women, of course, need to do more than read books and cast ballots. They also need to be partners with men in the labors and gains and risks and remunerations of productive industry, in quote. According to Taylor, she says that if society gives women a choice between, on the one hand, to devoting their lives to one animal function and its consequence, if that is on the one side, and on the other hand, with writing great books, discovering new worlds, building mighty empires on the other, women would be very much happy to leave the sweet, cozy, so-called sweet home behind. Most of the male writers at that time, like you have William Thompson, J.S. Mill, all these people focused, they actually focused their attention on the issues of married women, and they discarded the issues of single daughters. They discarded the issues of single women, divorced women. Most of the time they focused their attention on married women, their issues only. As I told you before, first wave feminism is taking up more of personal cases, which later on becomes political. Now, such a very important case which we need to understand is because this case has actually led to lots and lots of acts coming up, and the case is called Caroline Norton case. Caroline Norton, she was not a champion of equality as such, and she got married because she was afraid of living and dying old. She was afraid of loneliness, and she got married and left her husband in 1836. Because their relationship was gradually deteriorating, and it actually ended up in violence, in violent routines. And after this relationship got deteriorated, she wanted to leave him, but she did not get a divorce. She did not get access to her own kids. She did not get access to her own property. She did not get access to the money that she was earning. He even charged her with adultery, a case which was later on dismissed. And as a married woman, she had no legal existence, right? As a married woman means you do not have a legal existence. Your existence depends upon your husband's existence. So she could not go to law to defend herself. What she did was that she campaigned and wrote a plain letter to Lord Chancellor on the infant custody bill in 1831, on marriage and divorce bill in 1853, and on property bill in 1856, all of which resulted in Infant Custody Act, which gave women right to children's custody up to 7 years or so. Then Women's Property Act of 1856, which allowed married women to keep their earnings and to inherit the personal property, and Marriage and Divorce Act, which made divorce comparatively easy and favorable for women. So this case is very important in the sense that this was the case which actually legally provided women with three acts in a continuous manner. You have Infant Custody Act, you have Property Act coming up, you have Marriage and Divorce Act coming up. So this case, Caroline Norton case, is very important in that manner. It was during the second half of the 19th century that a sort of a true women's movement as such began to emerge in England. A group of friends, they came together and they initiated and organized campaigns around lots and lots of issues concerning women, concerning education, employment, improving the legal position. They began to react against the definition of femininity, the women's spheres, the bifurcation of these spheres, etc., etc., etc. And these group of women, they were called Ladies of Langham Place, who under the leadership of Barbara Leigh-Smith, that is their leader, Barbara Leigh-Smith, they established a journal called the English Woman's Journal, which later on became the English Woman's Review. So what happened was that they took up issues, each and every issue, and they began to work on it. And these women, they could get only teaching jobs, only jobs of teaching and being governors, etc. But then what happened is, because they were not properly educated, because they were not given the so-called rational sort of an education, they couldn't teach properly that way because they were not well educated. So education was a primary concern of this Ladies of Langham Place. Now, in the course of this 19th century, another demand came, the vote. The vote became a very central demand for the feminists. The vote, enfranchisement was seen as the recognition of women's rights to full citizenship, and bringing about sorts of reforms and changes in women's practical lives. So enfranchisement was seen as a very practical solution for women, for the change which would happen in women's lives. But it was, of course, as you see, it was, of course, a very complicated struggle which lasted for decades as such. The Langham Place circle, around the leadership of Barbara Leigh-Smith, it played a very crucial role in the long struggle for vote. They did organize lots of suffragette petitions which were signed by 1,500 signatures, and which argued that the arguments was that the word person should be substituted for man, and that all householders without the distinction of sex be enfranchised. It was J.S. Mill who presented it in the parliament, but then it was defeated. But that was a very encouraging start for these women, and they did form a suffragette committee. They organized petitions, they produced pamphlets. See, they also watched the suffragette movements which were happening all around the globe. They saw that in New Zealand, women could win a vote from 1893, which of course did inspire them very much. So the suffragettes, on the one hand, they did understand that they could not achieve anything, or they could achieve only very little by non-violent method, and there was lots and lots of suffragettes who like Lydia Becker, she was of the opinion that it needs deeds of bloodshed and violence so that the government is rose to justice. And you had Women's Social and Political Union with leaders like Emmeline Pankhurst and Christabel Pankhurst, and other groups like Women's Freedom League. the National Union of Women's Suffragette Societies, the Actress Franchise League, etc. All these people combinedly, they actually fought in a combined manner because they could not imagine a world. They felt like they did not, it was quite not endurable for them to think of another generation of women wasting their times and wasting their lives for votes. So they thought that they should do it right now. They did conduct lots and lots of mass campaigns, marches, demonstrations. At the end of it, all these things became much more violent. They began to smash shop windows. They began to set fire to letterboxes, theaters, castles, and even a woman activist, Emily Davison, she actually sacrificed her life by rushing in the middle of a race and bringing down the king's horse. So women in large numbers, they went to prison. So many of them, they were, I mean, they did really struggle a lot. But then there were lots and lots of women on the other hand who denounced violence as such, because of this violence, so many women were getting victimized. Nothing was happening. So women were getting victimized. So they denounced violence as such. So what happened was that divisions began to emerge in the group. So many people, instead of going on violent measures, they went for hunger strikes and they were arrested and they were force fed. So the campaign for votes, they were suspended for some time because of this First World War and all. But then in 1918, women over the age of 30, they were given vote, and in 1928, women won vote in equal terms with men. First World War, of course, did give sort of an entry to women into the public space. They did gain entry to the parliament, as a result of which they could produce lots and lots of reforms. And the Sex Discrimination Removal Act also opened professions and civil services for women. The Matrimonial Causes Act of 1923, it established equal grounds for divorce between men and women. Of course, there were lots and lots of dissenting voices against those magazines who did signal limited expectations for women. See, there were lots and lots of women voices who were fighting using words. Voices like Virginia Woolf, like Rebecca West, like Rose Macaulay, who all these people believed that women do have plenty to fight about. Now, Virginia Woolf, I hope you're familiar with Virginia Woolf, and with Virginia Woolf, we would end the first wave feminism. Virginia Woolf actually acts as the ending and the beginning of first wave feminism and the beginning of second wave feminism. So we would end it with Virginia Woolf. So Virginia Woolf, in her very famous, the key text of feminism, A Room of One's Own, she talks about the ways in which women were treated as second-class citizens in Cambridge. She describes the way in which she was barred from entering the library. She described the differences in spaces and eating patterns of women and men. Then it also talks about contraceptions, and it was Margaret Sanger who said that contraception enabled the average woman to have mutual and satisfied sexual act. So women did try to tackle issues like health and hygiene, sex and contraceptives, and also called for abortion laws. As I told you before, Virginia Woolf could be taken as a writer who acts as a bridge, or who bridges the first wave of feminism onto the second wave. So, and her text, Room of One's Own, could be taken as a key text in feminist theory, which is probably laying foundation to all the discourses that we deal with in feminist theory right now in the contemporary era. She analyzes the space that women lack. She analyzes the room that a woman did not possess. She analyzes the spaces where women were barred entry. She analyzes the erasure of women from history, how women were deliberately erased, excluded from history. She analyzes the language, women's own language, the need for a woman's own language, which again you have in Siksu, Julia Kristeva, etc. coming. So she was the beginning, of course. She analyzed the language where there were no women sentences of her own. She also brought about questions regarding sexuality, sexual orientation. A very famous statement where Chloe liked Olivia, where probably she is entering a female-female friendship there. So probably with this we would end first wave feminism, and in the next session we'll talk about second wave feminism in detail. Thank you.